Hello and welcome to the T2 podcast. That's the Toonami 2 podcast. I am your host, Bebop, joined by Rocksteady.
I guess my name is Rocksteady now. I'll go with that.
It is Rocksteady.
Mm-hmm.
And we are your monthly video podcast. That's right. We are now monthly instead of weekly because that was insane.
Yeah. And this is still kind of insane, honestly, but it's slightly less insane.
Slightly less insane. That's what we offer, is slightly less insanity than your usual amount of insanity.
Exactly.
So there you have it.
That's the show.
See you next month, folks.
So what do we got going on today's podcast?
We got a lot for you tonight. In the news, we're talking about the current state of Toonami and its schedule. Then we're giving our thoughts on what Toonami means to me, the fan-made documentary by the Toonami faithful. Then our discussion topic for tonight is Cowboy Bebop. So we'll be covering the series and giving our thoughts. And after that, our final topic, we each are given our top 3 live-action space sci-fi films. Then lastly, for the bump of the week, we have a Cyberpunk 2077 review. So jam-packed episode, gonna be a bit longer than usual. Most of our podcasts should clock out about the 1 hour mark, but this one's gonna be a whopping 2 hours.
Let's go right into the news. So Toonami's current schedule, I just kind of want to go over the lineup with you a little bit. Yeah. And each month we'll kind of talk a little bit about the lineup and our thoughts on the shows, or, if you're keeping up on anything or in particular, or if something catches your interest. Currently, we have playing, and we're about to actually get the final part here shortly. We've been seeing the Toonami tie Cosmo Samurai. And I'm sure you've been keeping up on that one.
No affiliation with Fairly Odd Parents.
Yeah, right? That could have been a whole different tie if they had him in there.
Maybe that'll be the sequel. So what do you think of Cosmo Samurai so far? Are we going through the lineup still?
Yeah, so we're going to go through the whole lineup, but
Okay.
this is technically part of the lineup as it's the first thing that's been playing each week. Now, next month we're going to be covering all the Toonami ties, and we're going to probably go more in depth on Cosmo Samurai, especially after seeing the final part. But currently, I'm pretty happy with it. I love the animation, especially with Tom and Sarah. I think their characters look great.
Fairy anime Sarah is the most adorable thing I've ever seen. And as far as the art style goes, it's pretty solid.
Yeah.
It definitely looks a little cheap at times, but for the most part, it's solid for what they're going for.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just really happy to see, Toonami trying things outside of just your typical ties. This is a non-canon thing. They've expressed that in literally every promotion for it.
Yeah.
And I dig that, though. It gives them more means to, branch out and just try experimental things.
Exactly, and I love the whole thing of it being in Japanese with subs and stuff like that. Unless it's April Fool's Day, we haven't really gotten subtitled anime on Toonami. That being said, I would love to see a dub at some point with Steve Bloom and Dana Swanson and stuff like that.
I don't know if they'll be doing it, but it doesn't hurt.
I'm just saying I would love to see that.
Yeah,
but I don't know. Maybe we can make a fan dub.
Yeah, okay. I could get into something like that. To start off the block, and this is a show tried and true? Is that what they say? Tried and true? Is that the expression? Am I just totally off base? Okay, maybe I'll say this a different way.
I don't know.
So the staple of Toonami here, Dragon Ball Super. People been complaining that the run of Super ended in 2018. And they're still showing reruns, but for me, I actually avoided Super for a long time until recently. So watching through Super lately has been kind of fun because it's I can't remember the name of the final tournament, but it's the last tournament arc for Super. And I'm a big fan of Dragon Ball Z since way back. That was pretty much my start.
I love DBZ too. I mean, it's one of those essential gateway animes, and as of now in my life, it's probably the only shonen anime I really care about at all. I think it's a blend of me having a sense of nostalgia for it, but not just that. Also, the fact the show kind of has this really almost absurd sense of humor with its characters and stuff like that, and I just love that it doesn't take itself too seriously, and it has this lighthearted tone, and it has this really unique world, and the art style itself is fairly unique. Akira Toriyama's art style is I think pretty awesome. And so there are certain things for me that make it a cut above the rest when it comes to shonen shows. Overall, I haven't seen Super, so I don't really have any opinions on it.
Right.
But I know that like the first, I want to say 26 to 30 episodes just kind of recover like those 2 movies that they released, but they add just a bunch of filler to those.
That's right. Yeah, they just stretch it out.
And
a bit.
I have no fucking idea why they did that, but people have complained enough about that regarding Super. So
I definitely agree that it's basically like they started the series out with filler, which turns a lot of people off. Definitely been enjoying the current arc.
Nice.
Worth a watch. Yeah. Okay, so something I just want to mention quick is that I've been watching Toonami week to week since like the beginning of January, end of December. So I've actually been keeping up on the current lineup and watching each week and checking out these shows on the lineup a little bit. So some shows I've decided to go and like watch a little bit more on my own time, and then others I kind of just ignore when it comes up on the block. But I'll get into that. The next show that we got is Attack on Titan season 4, I believe, the final season.
Yeah.
And I gotta tell you, I've been watching for weeks, and it still hasn't. I'm still not interested.
That's crazy. Is it like getting like crazy at all? Because I know like it's the last season and it's
the fights are interesting. I'll give it that. Like anything with the Titans fighting is interesting, especially the Titans fighting each other. I'm into like kaiju and shit. So seeing that is, that's pretty exciting. I mean, as far as the story, like I can't follow it. I've like sat down and watched one episode twice just to try to like get into it, and it's not catching me.
Are you like caught up on the previous seasons and stuff too?
I mean, all I'd seen before is the first few episodes of season 1. But I feel like Attack on Titan, like even though I don't know the subtle nuances in that, and maybe that is a big aspect of the final season, being that it is the final season, they want to like touch upon, all the things that are, I don't know, a little more obscure about the series, I guess, for lack of a better term.
Right. I think I covered this in the first episode, but I remember loving season 1 back when it came out, and then I remember when season 2 came out. I was really enjoying it, and then they like had a plot twist that kind of pissed me off. So
yeah, I'm gonna move along from Attack on Titan, but it's just not for me, I guess. I know people love it.
It fucking sucks.
Yeah, fuck Attack on Titan.
If you like it, then fuck you. No, I'm kidding. That's not true.
Well, it's said. It's done. It's on the podcast now. So, send all your hate mail to. I don't know. What's your Twitter handle? Do you have Twitter?
I don't have a Twitter. Actually.
Get you a Twitter, boy.
I have like a Twitter I posted on like twice when I was 14. But I should probably get one. Yeah.
You should probably get one. Well, moving along to the 1 a.m. slot, now we're getting Food Wars Season 3. Now, Sword Art Online just finished, and I gotta be honest, Sword Art really is another one that didn't catch me. I really wasn't paying too much attention. There was a fight that I found interesting near the end, but...
I certainly loved the first story arc of Sword Art Online when I was 14.
Okay.
That's all I'm gonna say. But that was when I was 14.
Right.
Does 20-year-old Brandon like any bit of Sword Art Online? No.
Oh. A lot of people like to compare it to Dot Hack, and that's something that I saw back in the day, and I remember as a kid it was interesting, but it confused me. But I don't think that Sword Art is on the same level as a Dot Hack, and that's saying it from somebody who really hasn't watched much of either series. So I don't know.
I haven't seen any Dot Hack, but I remember being really into that first season of Sword Art Online when I was younger, and now it's something I look back on, and every once in a while I'll be like, you know what, I need to watch some like pure garbage right now. And I'll watch Sword Art Online.
Well, now we don't have to worry about watching Sword Art Online because it's finished its run, and we have Food Wars Season 3 right now at the 1 a.m. slot. And
I saw a promo for it. It looks pretty fun.
Yeah, I saw some episodes from Season 2 of Food Wars. I still haven't caught up on the first season at all. But I'm looking forward to Season 3 because I think this is a pretty fun show. I like seeing all the different recipes and just them treating it like it's the end of the world. Food Wars is something that I gotta go and just like watch through it at some point, but I'm not in a hurry. I got a lot of other things to watch and do, so at some point I'll watch it all, but just enjoying watching the episodes each week on Toonami is, enough for me for right now.
It's such an unconventional Toonami show. I'm kind of glad that they'll have comedy shows like on occasion.
Yeah, like I mean, like I like that they've been branching out into that between like Pop Team Epic and like Jim Seto Death Beats or what is it, Ball Masters or whatever,
Yeah. Ball Masters was and I know that a lot of people would probably disagree with me on this, but I remember right before it started airing on Toonami, it would air
on Adult Swim.
Like right after it would air right after Toonami on Adult Swim.
Yeah, it did.
And I remember being like, they should have just kept the Toonami bumpers and had that be a part of the block. Like this would fit on the block really well. And then it actually did end up coming to the block, and a lot of people got pissed about it. And I was like, oh.
Well, see, I like having them branch out and not just anime, but animation as a whole. Like, just any animation and all branches of it, like, be it comedy, fighting shonen, or, like, like a drama. I like the idea of Toonami branching out and being more than just fighting shonen anime, but also just a hub for all sorts of animation.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, as far as, like, regular animation, I say there needs to be some slight connection. If it's anime, then I feel like that opens up the genre to fit, like, most types of anime in as Toonami shows. But for American animation, like, I can't see something like SpongeBob being a Toonami show.
Okay, yeah, like that's
or
fair.
Like Phineas and Ferb being on Toonami or something like that.
I'm sure like somewhere out there in like Brazil or something they.
Yeah. I take it back. That'd actually be pretty fucking awesome.
Yeah, I want to see the bumpers for that. You kidding me? So basically for me personally, until recently where one of these got taken off the block, I'm just going to give full disclosure here. Between 130 and 3 was my favorite part of the lineup. Because we had Fire Force, followed by Assassination Classroom, followed by SSSS Gridman. At 130, Fire Force is on. And yeah, this show really caught me off guard. Because the first episode, I was like, I don't know if I'd really be into this. It's like, they're firefighters and shit. But watching it week after week, this show keeps finding ways to rope me in. It's just like too well written, and like the characters are really starting to get interesting.
Yeah, you see, when I heard of the anime Fire Force, I was like, oh, like that actually sounds like, at least this is what I thought. I thought it was like actually gonna be a semi like realistic like anime about like a group of firefighters. I'm like, I've never seen anything like that before. I'm going to give that show. Then I watched like a trailer for it, and it's like firefighters, but it's an anime sci-fi action like extravaganza. I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah, I don't really know what to say about it. Like right now I'm still feeling out Fire Force because I'm only watching what they currently have, and I've been watching it for, I don't know, I guess 2 months. But the 2 months worth of episodes I've seen have been great, and I'm definitely going to go back and watch the first season on my own time at some point here.
Awesome.
Yeah, so at 2 o'clock, we had Assassination Classroom. Now we have Black Clover, and Assassination Classroom is one that like I started to watch on my own time, aside from it just being on Toonami, because I really love the premise of it, and this is like a big part of like, I like movies like Battle Royale. Yeah, so like Assassination Classroom, have you heard of the show, seen the show?
I've seen like the first episode, I want to say, and I remember it being a lot of fun. I know a lot of my friends are really into it. It's a show I'd like to see. I like the premise a lot.
Yeah.
I just haven't gotten around to it.
Yeah, Sony Strait as the teacher in this is phenomenal. I love his portrayal. Very good. Definitely would recommend Assassination Classroom. But currently they started airing Black Clover, and we're a couple episodes deep. I can't remember what season they're on right now, but like I haven't seen any of Black Clover really, like, so for me, not catching me yet. Have you ever seen Black Clover? Or
no, because I like right when it first came out, the biggest comparison people were making, and it was like not long after Naruto Shippuden had ended, and people were like, "Oh, this is just a rip-off of like Naruto, but less good," or stuff like that. And I never even liked Naruto,
right?
So I just figured that it probably wasn't for me. And to be fair, I shouldn't be going off of other people's opinions and stuff like that. I should watch it and make my own. But also just given that I don't really care for shonens largely, like I never really had any desire to watch Black Clover, so.
Okay. Yeah, moving on, because I don't have a lot to say about Black Clover just yet. So at 2:30, we have SSSS Gridman. And I gotta tell you, this is my favorite show currently. So, and you know, I'm pretty behind on a lot of what's current. I'm not gonna lie. I try to keep up, and I'm trying to keep up. But SSS Gridman, it ticks all the boxes for me. Between, like, I love kaiju, but this really, between all the designs of the characters, the writing is pretty solid. I'm pretty interested on what's going on with the story. And
still need to watch it, yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely worth your time, because I've gone back and I've, like, rewatched. I haven't watched all the episodes yet. I'm trying to keep up with Toonami a little bit, but I'm just rewatching what they already shown, so I can kind of get it in my head. But
it looks like the kind of show that would belong on Toonami.
It definitely is. It's like all your classic, like, you know, fighting kaiju anime, or like giant robot anime of old. But it's like, it's got a good sense of humor. It's also just like really interesting to see what's going to happen, where it's going. A couple episodes deep, I didn't notice it at the first few episodes, but as you get further on, you notice how much it starts getting fan servicey.
I don't mind fan service as long as like it's kind of self-aware about it.
I gotta tell you, usually fan servicey things I'll look at and be like, you know, it depends, does it make sense? And I don't know if it makes sense or not, but I'm enjoying it. So it's been pretty good.
One of my favorite animes is Kill la Kill, which is like literally
very fan servicey. Yeah.
But the show is very self-aware of what it's doing, and it kind of makes commentary on, you know, that trope in anime while also becoming that type of anime itself. And
exactly, it's a commentary on it as a whole.
That show is genius on so many levels, but that show's not on Toonami currently. So
no,
we should keep
but
going with the lineup.
Yeah, so just SSS Gridman, check it out. It's worth your time. It's really good. At 3 a.m. we have Naruto Shippuden, and I've always just kind of watched fights of Naruto. I've never really deep dived. Like, I've probably seen the first season, because just over the years I've seen the old episodes more than anything else. Like, I've tried to watch through Naruto over the years, and I keep trying from the beginning, and I just can't get through it. It's too much. It's like One Piece. It's overwhelming. You know, especially if you just didn't catch it, you know, back in the day, which, you know, for me, I saw random episodes, but
I've noticed most Naruto fans are people who grew up with it and that watched it when they were, like, younger and have stuck with it over the years.
Yeah.
I never had any interest in it. I was a kid when they first started airing it, but I just never watched it.
Naruto's one that I will watch the fights. I think it's interesting, but there's so much to get into, and I just can't yet. Maybe someday, but not today.
Fuck Naruto.
And fuck Naruto. I think that's what we're saying here. So to end it, to cap it all off, at 3:30, we have Demon Slayer. Now, Demon Slayer is something crazy to me, because not only is it wildly popular here in the States and in Japan and just basically wherever, there's a Demon Slayer movie that came out in Japan, and it outsold Spirited Away.
I heard about that, yeah.
That is crazy.
Insane to me.
So people really like Demon Slayer, and now my girlfriend and I actually watched through the first, like, 16 episodes.
Oh, wow.
So actually a good chunk, and we did this, like, you know, a while ago. This was back in, like, 2020. And, you know, Toonami's always a little bit behind, so they're currently catching up to, like, where we finished. And I gotta tell you, it's not a bad show, but I don't quite get the hype. Like, I could get the hype of, like, a Hunter x Hunter. I could get the hype of Attack on Titan. I really don't get the hype of Demon Slayer yet. And I don't hate the show, but it's not anything I haven't seen before.
So I really love the art style of Demon Slayer, and like just the color scheme all around and the character designs. The show has a really great look to it, in my opinion. That being said, it just falls into a lot of the same like shonen anime tropes, and I have a hard time so I agree. I don't really get the hype. Like I don't understand how these are continuously the shows that become popular, specifically the ones that follow these tropes. And most people just don't seem to care or even really notice. And I watched the first episode, and it wasn't bad by any means, but it still has all those common, like, just, like, over, like, too much exposition, like, over-explaining everything, and, you know, the character that's, like, scared of things, and...
Well, my biggest issue is this. It's all about our lead character. Mm-hmm. And all the side characters, while they do get character development, more specifically his sister, the one that he's doing all this demon slaying for.
N.L.Y.T.N, I think her name is?
I can't remember, but we'll say yes. Or I'll say no, and we'll choose which one is the accurate one. So, like, his sister keeps getting moments where she could shine and get some genuine character development, and then they just have her brother come in and save the day. Mm-hmm. You know, and that's really disappointing because I'd like to see the other characters matter, and knowing that they can't finish a fight on their own without being saved. I'm a big fan of Dragon Ball, so I'm very used to Goku coming to save the day. That's a very classic thing. But I think we really should try to work past that and build all of our characters proper. And when I see, you know, his sister come in and have a fight and then need to be saved, it's disappointing.
Yeah, I can assume. Like I only saw that first episode and I wasn't impressed, really. So I understand the show has its audience, and I think that's wonderful, you know, that people love it. But just not my thing.
Just to wrap things up on the current Toonami lineup, there are some things on here that, like, really have caught my attention and surprised me that I'm definitely invested in. Right. Namely SSSS, Gridman, and Fire Force, and Assassination Classroom. And not for nothing, Dragon Ball Super for me, because I took some time off from watching Super because I was disappointed in the early going. So now that I'm catching up with the later stuff, I enjoy it, but I get for people who've been watching Toonami continuously, they've been doing reruns for like 2 years. Mm-hmm. So I get the grievance there. But what do you think about the lineup as a whole currently?
I mean, I haven't seen one show on the whole lineup, really. Like, I mean, unless you want to count Attack on Titan, like, of which I've only seen, like, the first season and most of the second season of. So it's hard for me to really have much of an opinion. As a whole, it's fine, but there's nothing that has made me go, oh shit, I need to watch Toonami.
So I guess we'll move right along into what Toonami means to me, the fan documentary from the Toonami faithful. Mm-hmm. And what were your thoughts on this?
Well, first, like, what's your experience with Toonami Faithful's content in general? Because I have very minimal experience. Like, I tried to listen to one of their podcasts once, and didn't really click with me all that much. Not trying to throw shade, but I just never really got into their content. And this was, like, years ago when I first tried. But since then, I just have never really checked out any of their stuff. But they seem to be, like, one of the lead, you know, Toonami fan content, like, outlets out there right now. So.
Yeah, no, I mean, I've known about them for years, at least since Toonami came back. And I usually check them out for, like, random assortment of news. I get a lot of my Toonami info, surprisingly, from Caboose Jr. when just it pops up on YouTube or Twitter.
Me too.
So the Toonami faithful, I've listened to their, like, a few of their podcasts in the past. And it's, you know, they kind of just do, like, long discussion pieces. You know, they'll have, like, several people on and just talk Toonami, which is cool.
Kind of like what we do so far.
Yeah, it's similar to what we do, but, like, you know, I'm trying with the video podcast element to add that extra bit of the visual appeal. Mm-hmm. Which is actually what this documentary essentially was, is, you know, talking people's experience with Toonami, and, you know, the documentary itself ran about an hour 30.
Yeah, it's feature length. It's feature length, and it is promoted as a fan-made documentary. Like, so that's kind of the basis of how I was judging it while watching it, which might not be the most fair, but, you know, like, but do you want to give your quick thoughts on it, or should I go right into...
Oh, you know what, let's, what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, so, I'll be honest, I actually didn't finish it. I was meaning to finish all of it, like, throughout the past week, but, you know, shit happens. But, I did, when I first sat down to watch it, I watched about half of it. And I was intending on watching the whole documentary, but I'll be honest, I found it to be not the most compelling thing to watch.
Sure.
Yeah. I've always thought that Toonami would be a very fascinating concept for a documentary. I mean, especially for for someone like me or someone like you, like we are huge diehard Toonami fans, so of course it's a topic we'd like to see done in that type of media. But with this one, it just lacked direction. I felt it lacked a sense of vision, and it seems like they're very proud of this, and I'm pretty sure the Toonami community, like fan community as a whole, is fairly happy with this. So maybe I'm just a fucking asshole, but I thought it was kind of boring. It kind of just followed this very stale structure of kind of just, all right, here's an interview with this person in the industry and how Toonami connected to them. And it just kind of was just interview after interview after interview. If you're not a Toonami fan, or like don't really care all that much, or have not been previously introduced to the subject matter, then you're gonna find zero interest in this, at all. And again, bringing up that Chris Stuckman video, I feel like that's something you could watch even if you don't know Toonami very well, and it's still a very compelling YouTube video. Whereas this is it's a feature length project, and even as a Toonami fan, I found myself kind of bored.
Well, I'm gonna be honest with you. I watched this as it premiered. Mm-hmm. And I watched the full thing, so I watched the full hour 30 minutes, and actually I even rewound a couple parts at times to re-watch certain parts, and I watched the whole thing with my girlfriend, and she, it wasn't the most accepting or tolerant of it, because it's very run along, and it's a chore to watch, which isn't something you should hear when it comes to something you're passionate about or care about. It's oh, this thing that I care about, from an opinion from these other people, I would like to hear it, but I want to have a condensed version, perhaps, because it's just a lot of run-along conversation, which, maybe I'm guilty of.
The target demographic for this. Maybe the rest of the Toonami community is happy with it, but, we should have loved this, being the people we are. We love Toonami so much that we made our own fucking Toonami video podcast.
Right, I mean, that's just it. It's we really care about Toonami and its fandom, and the Toonami faithful are people who have given me a lot of information over the years. I care about them.
I think it's awesome that they made this. I think it's cool that it exists, and, we are also people making Toonami-related content, and they're just other people doing that as well, and they seem to have their own following, and people seem to love what they've been doing. I'd be more than happy to work with them in the future. This is just my honest criticism, and it's in no way, out of the sheer hatred in my heart. It's just kind of what I felt about something they made. Areas I think they could improve with their content.
Yeah.
But, no, I mean, they should keep making shit, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, this is coming from a loving place. We absolutely care. So I think we're ready to move along into our subtopic of the evening.
Can't wait.
Which is Cowboy Bebop.
We're just going straight masterpieces already in episode 2 of our podcast.
Well, we want to start off strong, and, recently, and I say recently being probably a month ago by the time this podcast is out, Toonami had aired a marathon, a Bebop, which, they do every so often. Every couple years you'll find they'll do a Bebop marathon. So I watched through that and really thought, hey, this is a topic that both of us are really passionate about. A lot of our love for anime came from the likes of Cowboy Bebop. Mm-hmm. And I know that you're a big fan. So how did you first get put on to Cowboy Bebop?
It's a wild story. And similar to how my introduction to Toonami was kind of... not the most traditional example. I can kind of say the same for Bebop. So the first time I ever saw anything Bebop related, I guess, was on Adult Swim. I remember flipping through the channels, and as a kid, I was I don't know exactly what it was, because I think it had to do with the fact that my dad really did not like a lot of anime, so I told myself, oh, I don't like anime. But I was flipping through the channels, and on Adult Swim I saw the Cowboy Bebop opening theme, which is entrancing, obviously. It's one of the best openings ever. And I couldn't help but watch that entire opening theme, and then I remember right when it was over, and I have no idea which episode it was exactly, but I remember right when it started, I saw that it was an anime, and somehow that did not click with me as I was watching the opening. So I immediately turned the channel, being the fucking dumbass that I was as a kid. And I must have been 10 at this point. It wasn't until funny enough, my dad, who had showed me Afro Samurai, because that's one of like the 2 animes he enjoys, it wasn't until then that I really started opening my mind about anime, and obviously when Toonami came back. But I want to say, like, a couple months after that first time I saw the Bebop opening, I was flipping through and I saw that Bebop was on again on Adult Swim. For some reason, I decided, okay, I'll watch this scene really quick. And it was the scene from episode 5 where Spike is talking to Annie. Yeah, that's right. And I remember their and the dialogue was really good, and I was into what they were talking about. But she was saying something like, "Oh, you've been dead for however long," and there was like all this history they were discussing there, and I was thinking, wow, this has to be like episode 100 and something in a long running show, and this seems like really fucking good. But I changed it because I was like, oh, this is no place to jump into a show. Little did I know that was episode 5, and that was the first we'd ever heard of said established history between characters. But then, obviously, when Toonami came back and Bebop was a part of it, I started watching random episodes as they were airing here and there, only to eventually go out of my way to watch the series from episode 1 onward. And I remember I watched about like half of it, and I was really into it, and I just never got to finish it for some reason until, I want to say, 3 months or so later, whenever I woke up and Toonami was airing the final episode of Cowboy Bebop. So there I was.
Oh, wow.
I had seen about half of the show, roughly, but I woke up to the scene of Spike telling the Tiger Striped Cat story. And I watched from that point on to, like, you know, the last 5 minutes of the last episode. And I remember being blown away by this concept, like, wow, you can end a story by, spoilers, killing the main character at the end. But it was more than that. Like, again, there was just something about the way the music was incorporated, just how they got across this truly tragic, melancholic vibe. And I remember after that final episode, I was obsessed, and I went back and I watched every single episode of Bebop. And that's kind of a weird story for how I got into Bebop, but ever since then, and I was about 13 by the time that I had seen all the episodes, it has stayed my favorite, not just anime, my favorite series of all time. Period. But I guess that about covers how I was introduced to it.
Yeah, so my history with the show is, I first saw it like on Adult Swim back in 2002. Right. When Adult Swim action was a thing, because I was really into Adult Swim action and the whole aesthetic. Mm-hmm. The old school Adult Swim promos that they had were honestly the best to this day. And I'm someone who, I'm big into Bebop, so I'll go back and rewatch like all the promos that Toonami's aired, Adult Swim, and just, oh man, they were so engaging and just really gave you a glimpse into the world of what they were trying to convey here.
Absolutely. And I wasn't even there like for when those originally aired, but I've watched them all online, obviously, and that the 4 beats, 4 parts of a movement promo where it's like going through do you know the one I'm talking about where they got Bo Billingsley to come in? Like, that is the best trailer that could ever exist for Bebop, in my opinion. Like, I like the one that Funimation did for the Blu-ray release a few years ago. That's a solid thing to show someone and be like, yeah, this is the show. But to me, nothing beats that 30-second promo.
Yeah, no, Adult Swim really just captured the energy of the show, mm-hmm. and the cool, jazzy feel. And just kind of like, you know, it's something that I've never actually seen, but I could imagine going to a bar and like that's on the TV late at night, you know, near closing or something.
Yeah. Okay.
So, you know, I really started watching back when Adult Swim action was a thing, and of course, like, Adult Swim would air Bebop for years, mm-hmm. you know, a long time. They had a good run, so I would watch it on and off all the time. And I always enjoyed the series, and again, this is another one of those things where as a kid, I just kind of take for granted, like, oh yeah, this is great, you know, whatever. It wasn't until years later, like 2011, that I actually went and I had a friend of mine burn the DVDs, actually. Nice. So the DVD menu was just the intro. So, like, every time I'd go to, like, a new DVD and I had, like, 5 discs, you know, you just get the Bebop intro. And I just remember spending countless hours rewatching these DVDs on loop.
Nice.
Just, like, waking up. Yeah, just waking up and hearing the Bebop theme and, like, seeing the intro. Like, waking up to the menu. Just really fond memories. And, like, I fell in love. And 2011 for me was a really interesting time in terms of, like, I was starting to get into anime again. It had been a couple years since like I really got into that stuff. I was like partying or whatever, and so I was getting back into that stuff. And shortly after, of course, Toonami would come back, which really just like elevated my love of anime to a whole other level. Like, I watched a lot of anime growing up as a kid. I've always been a lover and fan of anime, but I wasn't a true anime fan until like Toonami came back, because I went out of my way to just start like rewatching things.
Yeah, that was certainly the start of my anime fandom, though I went into that in the last episode. The way the music was incorporated into the sequences, it was the first time I ever really noticed like an artistic directorial vision in something. And
yeah.
In particular, like, not just with the final episode, but also with, you know, say, Ballad of Fallen Angels, episode 5, that Greenbird sequence there at the end, that was one of the first times I ever took notice to how a scene played out and to how it was orchestrated to a specific song. And I started, like, getting in the head of the creator and realizing, okay, these choices were all so purposeful, and they were all extremely strategic in order to get this type of vibe across. And it inspired me in so many ways as an artist, as a storyteller. It made me want to become a filmmaker in many ways. I mean, that and many other different things. But Bebop was definitely... It might be the most inspirational, like... piece of art that I've seen, like, honestly, in terms of how it's warped to me as a creator myself. And it's always a show I'll look back on and point at as what is responsible for me being the creative person that I am. But aside from all that, the personal effect the show has had on me, just as a series in general, it's got so much going for it, and it's undoubtedly a timeless classic. And now I'm 20, I consider myself to be like a fan of film and everything. And something I notice about Bebop watching through these episodes is, and this is something I've noticed like before, but it really rang true to me this time. Every episode is treated as a short film, more or less, and each episode like has a different set of goals almost. And you know, obviously we're talking about the show as a whole, but there are times where I feel it's almost unfair to, because each episode goes in with a completely different set of what it's trying to do.
Every episode being a standalone and having its own theme, they cover so many bases of entertainment. Not just space, not just action, but they comment on the human being, like what it means to be human.
The human experience, absolutely. Like it covers almost anything you can out of a piece of entertainment throughout those 26 episodes. You know, the main story arc following Spike dealing with his past. That one, like, there's obviously many tragic, melancholic elements of those. The majority of episodes seem to be like these standalone, really fun space adventures of them going after bounties and seemingly like failing time after time in so many ways, and just always falling into the most unlucky of circumstances.
Right. I like for how skilled they are. They never have money. They never have food. Absolutely. They never have money.
Well, it makes the show extremely relatable that life is always shitting on them. And it's not even that they're bad bounty hunters. Like, they're doing things pretty decently for the most part. It's more just life keeps shitting on them, and they keep ending up broke, and they keep ending up starving.
Yeah, it's the day-to-day hustle. Like, you know, all the characters are chasing a part of their past, and they're kind of stuck in time. They're at a point in their life where they're just, like, not only looking back at where they've been, but where they're going. So they're all just kind of stuck in this time capsule.
Well, they all have these backstories that have like so much weight and gravitas, but that's not what their life is about right now. Even though like it's a fundamental part of like who they are as people, like what life is about for them, you know, just like getting food day by day and like just doing whatever they can to live.
No, I mean also it's just about like figuring out yourself, learning the self.
Yeah.
Knowledge of self is so important, and it just kind of, everybody's got to figure out things at their own pace, and there comes a time where, like, everybody changes, And it's really just accepting either, that you have to move on from your past, or your past consumes you, or just sometimes there's things from your past that need to be addressed for you to move on.
Yeah, and I was going to get into that. But what the show is mostly about, if you want to look at it on its surface level, it's a show about being an adult in so many ways.
Yeah.
Because they have all this shit that's bogged them down in the past, but in the end, all they're really trying to do is live day by day and do whatever they can to eat and survive. But you're absolutely right that the main core theme of the show is learning how to let your past affect your future in so many ways, and learning how to come to terms with your past and stuff like that. And the show, in many ways, and we've discussed this before off mic, just between us, but it's really a show that can be looked at as an allegory for purgatory. I know this is a lot of things that people have discussed in the past. But, obviously, it's been said that Spike has died once before. That's referenced a few times. There's always people saying, "Oh, I thought you were dead," or whatever. There's always that sort of thing that's there. So, I guess this first one I want to mention is kind of... I view it as kind of underrated. No one ever really talks about it as being one of their favorite episodes, but... I honestly think it's a perfect note to begin the show on. That's obviously Asteroid Blues.
That's one of mine as well.
And this one really helps establish that theme of them constantly in denial about the tragedies going on around them, as well as their past. It opens up with them fighting about, or Spike being upset about the fact that Jet is making bell peppers and beef with no beef. Because that's really what their life is about. But then they go on this misadventure, and they find themselves engulfed in this other tragedy out there in the world, and we get to see this woman's relationship with Asimov, and we get to see her struggle and the fact that she just wants to go to Mars and be happy, and then she obviously loses that by the end of the episode and dies. And then at the end, we have that moment of Spike looking off into space, and we just see this look on his face where he's just fuck, and you feel it too as an audience member.
Yeah.
And then Jet passes him the cigarette, and he's like, "What's cooking?" And it ends with special bell peppers and beef, because it's been said that they've encountered tragedies like this many times before, and they're just going to continue having that same sort of routine regardless of that. And that encapsulates the show's themes perfectly, just within that first episode. And then the show just goes deeper and deeper into discussing that further on. But aside from that, I just love the tone and atmosphere of this episode. This one's definitely one of the most Western episodes of the series.
One of.
Yeah, one of, for sure.
One of,
the show obviously has other ones too, but this one's this one has that slow burn pace. This one has that, just that gritty atmosphere to it that really sticks out to me. And really that final scene, or right before we cut back to the ship and Spike's looking out there. I think the song is called "Road to the West" that plays whenever we see him, the Swordfish 2, chasing after them once they go out into space, and then they get shot up. That sequence in itself is honestly riveting to me.
So, really though, this episode serves as an allegory for loss. It's a commentary on, what it means to go through life, and you're gonna lose people along the way. And each episode has its own lesson to it. And they put a big emphasis on that there are lessons to be learned from these episodes. And yeah, this first one, aside from it having probably my favorite space chase in the entire series, just my personal opinion, because it's so relaxed, the music is so melancholy, and then the action. But it's also a commentary on people who have abused substances and lost control, and how sometimes you gotta let go because they can't help themselves. And we've maybe all seen someone like that or experienced something like that, where it's hey,
absolutely,
I don't have control over how they live their life, and this is what they're choosing to do. But
that woman, she kept on sticking with him, and in the end, she died as a result of it too. Because he couldn't get over his problem that he was dealing with, and because she couldn't really separate from him. They both kind of paid for it.
Yeah.
That's kind of how
And they both did. Like they both were doomed from the start to die, but she had her of mice and men moment of she took him out to protect him from the inevitable. That is, they were never going to make it out alive. So what other episodes stand out to you?
Well, I'm going in order of like how they came out, and by that you should definitely know what my next choice is, which I know is one of your favorites too, and and we've already talked about it before, but that's episode 5, Battle of Fallen Angels.
Yeah.
This episode on its own, I kind of feel comfortable calling a masterpiece.
I'd agree.
And it feels like a miniature action film within itself. Like, we're as far as, you know, it setting up this plot and it having a sense of pacing all on its own. But I think Ballad of Fallen Angels is definitely where the show kicks in and you go, okay, that's what the show is about. Like, this is what the show is capable of.
Yeah.
And the entire episode's beautiful, especially the opera sequence in the middle. The introduction to Vicious, really. And I mean, technically it was introduced at the beginning of the episode, but where you first get the concept of like how menacing this guy is that scene with Faye where she looks over and she sees Mal Yenra's dead body, and she's like, who are you? And you just see him looking off as that opera, the Ave Maria keeps playing, and then he's just vicious. And then we hear the clapping, and that's the mid-episode mark. But what's even obviously the standout sequence of the episode is literally like this, almost the entire second half. Spike going to the cathedral to the song Rain is one of the most atmospheric setups to a location I can think of. And then the whole standoff like in the church and everything is just it's unbelievably well put together. I actually like the lack of music while they're engaged in combat. We have this like beautiful introduction with Rain, and then this whole middle section of just like gritty, violent gunfire between all of them. Obviously culminating when Spike and Vicious have their quick little standoff of their own. And there's that beautiful shot of Vicious with the sword at Spike where he has the gun at him. That's literally iconic when thinking back on the show. But what's even better, and I already mentioned this before, and the effect this had on me as a artist/filmmaker, but that entire Greenbird sequence is really just something. It's a height that doesn't get reached often in filmmaking, in my opinion. Like that like to me, that is as good as you can make a scene in anything. And it's nice that the episode ends on a nice little touching comic relief moment. But this episode is an achievement in filmmaking, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, you'll get no argument from me. This is my favorite episode of the entire series.
It might be mine too.
It's such a strong standalone episode. It could have been its own feature film. Really, I love all the callbacks, which not for nothing, every episode has a callback to some form of media. And usually it's Western entertainment. Yeah. So here in the States, like, we can relate to a lot of these things. And in this, there's a lot of callback to one of my favorite movies of all time, which is The Crow. And
oh, is there? Like,
there's
is there
a
really
lot
callbacks to specifically The Crow? Okay.
Multiple. Yeah. So not for nothing, but the whole sequence when they go into the church and have that shootout is very reminiscent to the final shootout in the Brandon Lee's The Crow.
Yeah.
In that final scene.
I've seen that movie like twice, so.
Yeah, and then there's also the scene with Spike falling out the stained window, which is exactly what happened in the film. Brandon Lee falling out the window. It's very reminiscent to that.
That's really interesting. Okay.
But it pertains to Spike's character of just this kind of death and rebirth, and basically him. He isn't sure if he's dead or alive. Which is The Crow, yeah, he knows that he's, dead, and that he's come back from the dead. And, Spike's looking for similar answers. He's not sure if he made it out alive in that initial coup when he tried to leave the Syndicate, the Red Dragon Syndicate. Mm-hmm. So this is like, every time he has this close encounter with death, especially with Vicious, it always gives him a little bit more on, like, am I alive? Am I dead? This as a whole, from its sequencing from Faye going to the theater and experiencing what Vicious really is like. But, start to finish, this is my favorite episode, and it just really showcases what the show is capable of.
So, regarding my other favorites, I don't think we should go that in depth with all of them, but no. I'll just start. Waltz for Venus is actually like one of my favorite episodes of the show.
Is it really?
That episode honestly really speaks to me on an emotional level, and that's one of the few that like. I mean, yeah, I'm a big softie when it comes to movies and just entertainment in general. Like, it's not that hard to make me cry at something, but I definitely fucking cried at the end of that episode.
Yeah.
It's because Rocco is he's such a dork. He's such a geek in the episode that you can't help but, like, to me, you can't help but, like, love his character.
You want to see him succeed.
Yeah. And, he's obviously made a few missteps in his life. But especially the connection to his sister is that's really the heart of the episode. It's not Rocco's death scene itself that makes me cry there at the end. It's when Spike goes to tell his sister.
I know.
And, like, it's this beautiful, quiet scene where she's just like, where is Rocco? And Spike stays quiet. And then she just feels his face. And then she's like, he's dead, isn't he? And go away. And then it ends with him saying, you know better than anyone. He was a terrific guy.
Well, that's just it. She was blind, and her brother had been spending his time doing illegal things to raise enough money to get this plant that would help her see again. And by the end of it, does she have it? Yeah, she has the plant. She'll be able to see again. She wants the first thing to see is her brother, and he's gone.
And he's dead.
In getting that for her.
So sad.
Tragic.
It's so sad. That episode very much so like humanized Spike in a lot of ways for me. That was one of the few times you actually got to see him be a genuinely good person.
Yeah, I mean, it's been said that Spike is, he has a hard time feeling. He has a very hard time dealing with his emotions or giving into his emotions. But the things that he seems to feel the most is when he's having these interactions with other people and, the trauma that comes from, tragedy. The things that he feels the most usually are the hard-hitting, hurtful things that happen in life, or just... He's very much like, you could say he's an adrenaline junkie, but more than anything else, he's an emotional junkie. Like, he's searching to feel.
I couldn't agree more with that statement. But yeah, Waltz for Venus is one of my favorite episodes. I love the use of the song Stella by Moore, I think it's called. The music box song.
Yes.
The use of that, as far as, and I've been discussing how the atmosphere of the show many times, but especially in this episode, the use of that song is super powerful in my opinion. But Waltz for Venus is definitely one of my all-time favorites, and I think that's all I have to say about that one.
Yeah, just a good choice,
awesome.
Honestly. And then, I think that holds up fine.
I'm gonna try to get through these quick too. It's hard because there's so much good about all of these that it's hard not to talk about each one individually. But Toys in the Attic is definitely like a standout in the series. It's might be like the smallest scale episode, as it's like confined to the ship and just to those characters. And the episode's a great homage to films like Alien, with its slow space horror and its
and the Blob.
Yeah, I'd say
with
so.
the
I really
form
love
of the creature itself.
This episode, how it's very much it plays out in the lessons that each character is saying. Like, that was definitely a unique touch to add onto this specific one. I think it has some of the best writing as far as some of these lesson things go. There's just a great narrative voice to that. The episode's very suspenseful, especially like towards the end, despite trying to capture the creature. But it also has a nice little sense of humor to it too. It's one of the most fun episodes, in my opinion.
That's what I was gonna say. Is it's like one of my favorite episodes. Not my favorite, but it is one of my favorite episodes because it's like so fun-loving and also such an homage to the Alien series and the Blob and just kind of like that space creature. And actually, the promo that aired before the episode. So like at the end of every episode, they have like a little like preview into the next episode.
Yeah,
and it's just like the promo for that is like my favorite of all the promos because it's like, the space creature from beyond the stars. You know?
I almost forgot about
like,
that.
I love the homage to like classic like 50s sci-fi.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, no,
which I'm a big fan of.
This is definitely one of the best episodes if you're a fan of like film and like horror and sci-fi horror and stuff like that. I just really appreciate the small scale of the episode. And the fact that it's very simple and it just involves these characters, and I kind of like that it implies that they all die at the end. So it's like, make of that whatever you will. But it's very much so one of those and they all died episodes. In the show.
Yeah, and that's what I love about the show as well, is they're not afraid to take those kind of risks. Mm-hmm. And it's like, it's all part of a joke. Mm-hmm. Like, it's not really something meant to take seriously. Yeah. But it's also something, it's like, fuck it, yeah, they all die at the end. Like, yeah, do your thing.
If you want to think about, like, obviously they probably all just recovered, Like,
there are episodes follling it, but obviously, to leave you with that last note of like, and they all died.
The title card literally just says the end. And you're just like, all right, cool. Okay, next one, Jupiter Jazz, which might be the high point for me as far as atmosphere goes in the show.
I could understand that.
I just love the jazzy vibe over the entire episode, and I love just the slow pace. And watching, like, you feel cold watching the episode. Like, it really captures that environment well. Might be my favorite environment in the whole show. The planet of Callisto. It's a great location. I love the slow, depressing tone to the whole thing. For a show that came out in 1998, I love the concept of having this. I guess it's implied that the character is like non-binary of Gren, like this sort of intersex sort of character that has both male and female body organs because of the government tests done on them. But,
yes, actually, really quick, that's something I want to touch upon is just how progressive the show was in terms of like
so ahead of its time.
Yeah, like in terms of like non-binary people or addressing like trans people or all that. It's they're not afraid to talk about all walks of life and treat them like they're real people, like they actually are.
Yeah, it never made fun of that element of Gren. It was honestly a really. And when I was 13 and I watched that episode, I just took it as, like, fascinating. I'm like, well, I've never seen, like, a story use something like this before. And Bebop was willing to do whatever it could to not just show all different types of people, but to also just use it to tell new types of stories. And to do things that hadn't really been done before. But, like, Gren, like, regardless of that, is one of my favorite, like, one-off characters in Bebop.
I'd have to agree.
You really connect with them and really, and again, just another example of a very tragic character that has their own goals and aspirations and in the end just fucking dies. But, which Bebop seems to be full of those. But, this episode, the soundtrack of this episode is on
phenomenal.
Its own, like separated from yeah, absolutely.
I would say this two-parter had the best soundtrack of any of the episodes.
I agree for sure. This one, like, doesn't seem to be... I think it's gained more of a cult following now, but I remember back when I was first getting into Bebop, no one would ever mention it as one of their favorites. And, and to me, it's always stuck out as one of the best episodes, one of the most emotionally, like, satisfying episodes, too. That end montage of Spike attaching Gren's ship to the swordfish, too, and then, like, sending them off to go back to Mars. Like, that whole sequence set to Space Lion is one of my favorite, like, ending montages to something, honestly. And just that song Space Lion is honestly so incredible.
The sequence with the Native American characters basically discussing that his star has fallen.
Yeah, Laughing Bull and his son. Yeah,
yes,
it's a great bookend to the episode.
And also, it kind of serves as a bit of foreshadowing to Spike's eventual demise. I mean, they're talking about Grin the character, but it is a bit of foreshadowing to what would be Spike also meeting a similar end.
Absolutely, and like they mentioned the Guardian Star or whatever that had just fallen. And, you know, I'm sure you know this, but at the very end of the last episode, of the credits of the last episode, you see, like, a star, like, blink and then slowly disappear. So there's, like, a setup and payoff with the Guardian Star in that way, which I always thought was a really clever nod.
So, my favorite scene in all of Bebop is in episode 12, where these thugs come up to Spike, and they think that he's got money, which right off the bat is funny. And then they say that he is vicious, to which Spike just goes off. And my favorite action scene of the entire series.
Wow, that's a bold statement.
Yeah.
Let me pull up the clip.
So, here's a clip from episode 12 where Spike fights these street thugs.
I'm searching for something.
There's nothing around here. Just some stale bread, a broken down car, and some old whiskey that tastes like gasoline.
Ever met a guy named Gren?
Can't say that I have.
Oh well. So, you boys need something?
You're vicious.
What did you say?
Where's the money?
Hand it over, or you won't live to spend it.
You think I'm vicious? You don't know what vicious is! Start talking! Why the hell do you think I'm vicious?
I heard a big deal was coming down for some lunar red-eye. They said Grin was selling it to Vicious for big bucks. I wanted to get my hands on the money!
Take a look. Do I really look like I have money?
Why not? All foreigners are rich.
And the code name's Julia?
Sounds like some sleazy wench's name, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really does.
That is a great scene. I wouldn't say it's like my favorite scene in the series, but I can see why. I just was caught off guard by how that one moment has become a meme, like a Cowboy Bebop meme. The, do I look like I have money?
Yes.
Of him standing there, and I completely forgot about that while watching through it this time again. That was kind of a funny thing to take notice of. I tried to order a debit card that had that image on it, and
Really?
it didn't really happen. Yeah, because like there was this one website saying that they were selling them, and then I went on the website and they weren't selling them, and I was really upset because that'd be a fucking perfect debit card.
Yeah, it would. that is my favorite action scene. That's my favorite scene in Cowboy Bebop, just because, like, the whole idea of, like, okay, these thugs are gonna run up on this guy, and they're gonna, like, okay, you look like you got money, they heard about, oh, there's, like, some deal going down, you're probably the guy, right? And they just ran into the wrong guy to say that to.
Yeah, no, it's pretty awesome how Spike goes ballistic like that. You think I'm vicious, you don't know what vicious is! You know, that's just pretty fucking cool.
Well, that's a pretty good read on that.
It's a great... Oh, thanks. Yeah, that's definitely a standout moment in the episode. Yeah.
Well, I also just, I love that, you know, they get their asses kicked again by, like, Faye and Grin real quick, and at the end of the episode, he's just kind of like, oh man, I'm gonna go get an honest job, like, I've had enough of this.
Doesn't he get hit by a train right afterwards or something like
It's
that?
implied, yeah, they don't show it, but they do imply it.
It's off screen, and then Jet, like, makes a face like, ah.
Like, oh.
Yeah.
But no, just like I honestly think after that beating they should have been done. Like the fact that they have the fight with Faye after, I almost feel like that should have happened before it. You know, especially
beaten up by Gran and Faye.
Yeah, like especially like with how much of an ass whooping Spike unleashed on these dudes. Like that should have been a rat.
Yeah, but it's a really funny reoccurring gag through the episode. They keep getting their asses kicked, so I don't know. It's pretty cool, but you're absolutely right. Yeah, Spike just destroys these guys. One of the best animated fight scenes in the show too, probably. Like really fluid animation here, and really expressive faces and shit.
And I love the jacket, the pink like puffy polo jacket.
I was just gonna say that I love that look on Spike, and I love that this episode in general provides like this winter coat themed set like for designs for all the characters, and it's really fun to see that, I guess. But Spike's in particular, I love the pink jacket that he wears. Like it's really fitting.
Nah, he rocks it though.
But yeah, do you have anything else to say about Jupiter Jazz?
No, just quite a underrated and pretty amazing two-parter in the series. And I understand that there's only two-parters in the series, and the other one's the finale, which I guess you could say overshadows this. But I think that this has not more to say, but it has something very pertinent to say that I don't think should be underlooked.
Yeah, this is definitely a huge recommendation as far as episodes of the whole show. One of our next favorites that I wanted to bring up was the episode Pierrot de Fou.
Yes.
With Mad Pierrot, who might be my favorite one-off Bebop villain in the show. Because one of my... Bebop's pretty much a masterpiece in my opinion, but one of my criticisms is most of the one-off villains are extremely forgettable in the show. And they kind of just serve their purpose for the plot. But Mad Pierrot is so fucking memorable, and he's literally the Joker of Cowboy Bebop in so many ways.
Yeah, he's just insane.
He's just this force of fucking nature. Where every time anytime you see him, you're gonna fucking die. They say anyone who sees him has never lived to tell about it. And Spike, of course, like goes into this encounter with Mad Pierrot. And the episode is like him basically getting chased after, in a sense. I think it's the most effective horror-wise out of the show. There's some genuinely chilling moments for me here.
Yeah.
Mainly the montage showing his backstory with that song that has to be a Pink Floyd tribute. That whole sequence in general I find to be pretty scary in my opinion.
Yeah, just the shots of him being experimented on, and then like the cat that essentially like leads to the crux of like why he's so terrified is like cats. I don't know if they bred him in a way to be afraid of cats as a means of motivation, or if just he was being abused. Yeah, like if he was being abused and the cat was there, and that's what he...
It was like the trigger to his trauma.
Yes.
In many ways. But this one in particular, this one probably has my favorite action in the show. This one, in my opinion, has the best animation the show has to offer in general. Like, this one must have had a decent-sized animation budget, especially for that opening fight between Spike and Mad Pierrot. Like, there's some extremely fluid shit here, and some really interesting stuff that they do with the camera. I guess it's not a camera, but you know what I'm talking about.
The camera angles that they do take, even though it's not camera angles, but just the zoom in shots of like going over the city into the alley.
Oh yeah, that's always really cool.
Phenomenal.
And,
it reminded me of Batman. So it's funny that you say the Joker because it reminds me of a Batman episode.
Yeah. I guess that would be a good connection for why I love the episode so much, because I'm a massive Batman fan. But I kind of see what you mean by that, as far as like the overhead shots of the city from the point of view of Man Perot and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I like that this episode is kind of low on plot and just focuses solely on the pacing and the structure of the action scenes. It does have a plot, but they kind of get their exposition out of the way really quick, and they kind of just say what we need to know, and it focuses purely on the direction and the fight choreography. And it's definitely one of the more riveting episodes from a directorial standpoint. Yeah, I couldn't recommend this one enough. This is always a delight for me to watch as an episode.
Yeah, no, the focus of this one is like almost solely on action. It's like you get a bit of backstory on like, oh, this psychopath, he's like souped up. It's basically like this isn't even his final form. It's like he's got these abilities to reflect bullets, you know, and like they hype him up for like this final action sequence at the end where they go through like this like carnival that's kind of like a Disneyland.
Oh, so awesome.
That's like a planet that's a carnival, which can you imagine?
Yeah. I mean, it's a great setting and it makes sense for that future world. But it's so perfect and it's so creepy. Yeah, because, Toys in the Attic obviously has a lot of horror elements, but to me, this is the most effective horror episode of the show by far. This is the one that I find the most scary. I just think it's some of the best action sequences I've seen in animation. And, aside from stuff like made by Genndy Tartakovsky, which he says Bebop is one of his favorite shows, too.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah, there's an interview with Genndy where he mentions Bebop being one of his favorite things ever. That's what he said.
That's really cool.
And watching an episode like this, I could definitely see why someone like Genndy would be really into Bebop.
Oh, yeah.
Because this one very much so, just you got the slow pace and the long action scenes that are just expertly directed.
But I love also the whole, like, almost, like, precursor to what would be a Five Nights at Freddy's with this creepy, goofy animatronic.
That scene on its own is pretty fucking scary, too, when it's, like, freaking out. But I can see that it's definitely kind of similar to something like Five Nights at Freddy's. And the final scene is, like, oddly kind of sad, too. Like, seeing this, because he really is a child, as Jet mentions in the episode. And when he's just like sobbing profusely, he's like, I want my mommy, blah blah blah, and he's screaming, and you're just like, fuck, this is sad to see. And then he just like gets stomped by the animatronic and fucking dies. And
fucking like, brutal. He just kind of let that happen, you know?
Well, yeah, but like obviously, like that's probably how the situation should have ended. I mean,
yeah, he wasn't sane.
He was not safe to be kept alive at all. I only have one more listed, honestly.
All right, so what is your last one?
The last one that I have listed is Hard Luck Woman, which is the episode like right before the final two, which is kind of like Ed's finale episode in a sense.
This one, rewatching it just before this, so we could talk about it. Yeah, this made me cry.
This is definitely one of those episodes that makes me fucking bawl.
Yeah.
But how could you not with that final scene? But aside from that, like the episode plays out in this fairly fun, sort of lighthearted way where you get to learn more about Ed's backstory, and then like you get hit there in the middle, like with I'd say like more the heart of the episode involves like Faye and her backstory and whatnot, and reconnecting and getting her memory back. But the more the episode goes on, the more reality kind of sets in for these characters. It kind of becomes this very hard to swallow, sort of bittersweet, almost reality check for everyone. And just like you can't have a better way to like end a character like Ed, honestly. I like that they mentioned something like she's like a cat strolling from place to place, you know, and you know, she was hanging with the Bebop for a while, and then she was reminded of this little endeavor from her past of being abandoned essentially by her dad.
Yeah.
And that brings her to leave. But then this is also the end of Faye's story arc with her getting back her memory and everything. And mostly, yeah, it's just like the last, I don't know, like 3 or 4 minutes that really like hit you hard from an emotional standpoint. Starting off with Faye running back to, what was it? Was that like her school that she used to be at or something?
I kind of got the impression it was like a, not a school, but a foster home of sorts or something.
Yeah, it was something like that. But anyway,
yeah.
This place that clearly had was a big element of her past. That scene of her running up to it, like almost like in fear of what she is going to see. Where it's cutting back to like her running up to it in joy as a child, and her running towards it like panicking almost, just breathing excessively, and then the reveal of her standing there when it fades slowly back in, you just see it's all gone now. It's like practically demolished. And then there's just that blank, lifeless stare in her eyes as like her hair slowly sways in front of her face. And that's the perfect lead-in to the end montage with the Call Me song by Steve Kante, I think his name is, Steve Kante. And that whole scene is a perfect parallel to Asteroid Blues. You know, it shows how Spike and Jet, they successfully kind of distract themselves from these tragedies they fall into constantly with this whole bell peppers and beef sort of thing.
Right.
With that whole motif. But then here, when they have like all the hard-boiled eggs, we see them struggling to keep it cool. And we see them just like aggressively shoving all these eggs in their mouths to kind of like hold in the tears almost of how upset they are about Ed leaving. And so to me, it's a brilliant, very subtle parallel to that first episode.
Well, for me, it's also upsetting in the sense of like, Spike felt like his end was inevitable. Like, he didn't even feel like he was really alive. But like, you know, there's the part of me that's like, oh man, if he didn't lose Ed, and if Faye didn't leave for that duration of time, obviously Faye does come back. But like, if those things didn't happen, maybe that wouldn't have triggered him going to the finale. But like, it was all inevitable. And just in that episode of Faye realizing that like her past is gone, and she talks to an old woman who actually recognizes her and could have gotten more information about like, oh, who am I and where do I come from. She actually remembers a snippet of what happened, and she has to leave the situation because it's just too uncomfortable. And she goes home and takes a shower. She comes to the realization that the lunar gate exploded, and that she had been in this awful accident that only she had survived, and it took time for them to find out medically how they could take care of her, so they encapsulated her in like carbonite, or whatever you want to call it. They cryogenically froze her, which is something we've seen in science fiction many times. But just this whole thing of like, she was in this awful accident that made her lose her memory, and by the time she gets it back, like, she's so far removed from where she was. It doesn't even pertain to her life as it is now. So she's almost forced to move on. As much as she tells Ed, like, hey, you know, stick to your ties because they're essentially what define you. At the end of the day, you define you. Because your ties will not be there forever, and things change.
Very well said. Very well said. I think that perfectly illustrates the themes of the episode. But yeah, this is definitely kind of the emotional high point, at least for me, in the series.
From there, it's just death. From there, you just get Spike and him finally getting reunited with Julia, only for it to lead to his demise.
As well as her demise as well. It's just destruction and sadness from there on out.
Yeah, and honestly, like, if we could just talk about the end for a minute. So, like, we've gone through, like, the episodes that are essential to us. The ending of it all is essentially, like, him coming to terms with the fact that he needs this. He needs to die to really understand, like, what it means to be alive. And Julia is there, and she's like, hey, we could just run away the way that you wanted to all those years ago. We could do that. We can go. And ultimately, life proves to him with like things like the death of Annie when they go back to visit her.
Oh, that was so sad. Fuck. That one character I saw for like 5 minutes once, I didn't even realize she meant that much.
Yeah.
Like, to me.
And just, you know, Vicious had been making it known. It's like, you're not able to escape fate. You're not able to escape the inevitability that this is the end will happen. And as much as you run away from your path, you know, as much as you want to run away from your destiny, at the end of the day, this is it. This is the end.
Confronting your demons.
It's about confronting your demons. And almost in the way that, like, the show serves as a limbo of sorts for all these characters. Is like 3 years ago, Spike left the Syndicate and left that former life behind and didn't get to meet up with Julia and has been wondering where she is since. And Jet having left a relationship that he was in for years that was really meaningful to him.
He was like kind of carrying this torch for all these.
He was carrying this torch for all these years. And then you hear the name when the Native American character tells him Running Rock, which he's always been the rock of the series. He's always been the voice of reason and conscience of the series. But like at the end of the day, like he wavers just as any person would. With Faye 3 years prior, finally being awakened after years of being encapsulated in this isolated state and returning to a world that she can't afford to live in and has all this debt that she was just kind of awoken into. It's all of them were kind of stuck, and they're all in a state of flux where it's like they know that change is imminent. They have to change, but they're avoiding it. And by finally realizing they have to confront their demons, that's the only way that their story actually moves forward. And also, it's an accepting fate and accepting death. And life is finite. You won't live forever. And eventually you have to accept that you're not going to live forever. And you have to come to terms with the fact that one day you will die. And I think Spike at the end, with his confrontation with Vicious, I like to believe, and I know Watanabe has said that, like, okay, it's not really definitive that Spike died or not, but I personally, for one, like to view the series, view the story as it's done. Spike dies.
Yeah, me too.
Spike dies.
That's how I view it as well.
He comes to term with the fact that he's not going to live forever, and he has to do this.
The story has much more weight with the fact that he actually died. It brings that theme forward.
Exactly. It's just making sure that you make use of the time you do have and that your ties to people are important, but also finite. You won't have all these experiences forever. You're not able to hold on to everything. I think that the series as a whole, it serves as a means of getting all these life lessons out to its audience that if it wasn't just for the amazing soundtrack or the great visuals and action and tone and themes, it's the lessons that really just teach us, like, hey, you're still human and we all inevitably run into this or a form of this.
Yeah, no, I agree. I wish I could say something just as eloquent as you put it, but no,
well, I appreciate it.
I think you nailed it.
All right, and now for our main event of the evening, we're going to talk about our top 3 live-action space-themed movies.
Yes.
Now, this is a pretty broad spectrum, even though it is still live-action in space. There's a lot of live-action space movies when you really get down to it.
Yeah, and I had to do a quick Google search to, like, refresh my memory on certain space movies that I'd seen to kind of... which I would like to talk about on the podcast, but there are quite a bit. Having it be just a space movie in general, that kind of because there are many different types. There are space horrors, there are space comedies.
Right.
Obviously, there are space adventure films, and the main criteria we kind of wanted to set for ourselves is we cannot mention like a Star Wars or Star Trek movie, because that's kind of too easy.
Right. I think that would...
That's not to say I didn't go to other popular space franchises.
Okay.
But we'll get to that when we get to that.
So why don't we get started with your top 3 space live-action films, if you will.
Okay, now this isn't in any particular order, and I'm not saying that these are like the best space movies ever. These are just like some of my personal favorites that I wanted to discuss, and I can't even say like all 3 of them are perfect movies, but I just really enjoy them. So my first choice is actually Interstellar by Christopher Nolan. It came out late 2014, and it's definitely not a perfect movie, but I'm a huge Christopher Nolan fan, as I think most people are. There's just something about the way he directs sequences, even if plot-wise his movies aren't always completely there, or and sometimes there are glaring issues plot-wise with his movies, and Interstellar is no exception to that. There's a lot of cheesy, cornball-y things that kind of happen in the movie, and there's certain things that don't make a ton of sense. But it's more the spectacle that's presented, and the grandiose presentation that he gives in these films. And I'll never forget. The reason I mentioned Interstellar as being one of my favorites is mostly because of my first experience with the movie. So it came out late 2014, but I remember I went to see it quite a bit after it had come out, but it was still like an IMAX screening.
Oh, wow.
So my dad and I went, and that's the best way to see a Nolan movie, is in an IMAX theater, where the screen just takes up your entire line of sight, and like the sound around is just like booming at you from all directions, like as loud as possible.
Yeah.
I will never forget that experience of sitting there just in awestruck amazement, just not believing the movie that I was watching. I love the movie purely from a presentation angle. There are certain, I'd say, sappy, sort of melodramatic elements of the movie that don't work super well, but there's just something about the way Nolan directs a sequence and captivates the audience in an almost hypnotic way. And I guess what I'm going to send is the film's teaser trailer, or I guess what I'm going to show is the film's teaser trailer, because it kind of best conveys the types of sequences that I found most emotionally riveting in the movie. And it's also only like it's just under 2 minutes.
Oh, perfect.
So I figured that this would be a good thing to show off. But yeah, I really don't have a ton to say about Interstellar. It's been a couple years since I've seen it, but it's definitely, like, as a movie fan, it's kind of just what you look for out of the cinematic experience is exactly what I got and more when I first sat in that theater and watched it. And I felt like a changed person, like directly after, like, stepping out of the theater. It felt like I had just been exposed to something that I'd never experienced before. And there are far better movies I've seen since then, but still, like, to me, what I love about cinema is that initial viewing, that initial experience you have of being young and going into a theater and having your mind blown. And I'll never forget that specific feeling I had when I first saw Interstellar. So yeah.
Well, I haven't seen Interstellar, but I see that it's Matthew McConaughey, and I knew about it without knowing about it. I think this came out like shortly after his car commercials or something, and like I remember that being like a running joke online. I don't know.
Yeah, and this teaser, like, it might as well kind of be a Matthew McConaughey car commercial, and he gives kind of this narration that's a bit cheesy, and it's pretty easy to laugh at, and I love making Matthew McConaughey jokes. What I really love about it is more the sense of the use of Hans Zimmer's music and just the.
Ooh, I love Hans Zimmer.
Yeah, and this film showcases some of his best work, I'd say, musically speaking, which most Nolan films do. Most Nolan films pull out the best of Hans Zimmer's score work.
Can I just say this last bit is like, I love that the thumbnail for this, we were just talking about the Matthew McConaughey car commercials, and it's a thumbnail of him in a car. That is so perfect.
Yeah, no, the teaser almost plays like a Matthew McConaughey car commercial directed by Christopher Nolan. So
oh my god.
So like, it's definitely something like, even when I was watching through it this last time, I did laugh at it because it was kind of funny. But it still captures the tone of the movie pretty well, and it captures the feeling of those sequences that blew my mind when I was younger.
We've always defined ourselves by the ability to overcome the impossible. And we count these moments.
The first ever to fly faster than the speed of sound.
These moments when we dared to aim higher, to break barriers, to reach for the stars.
76, you are go.
To make the unknown known. We count these moments as our proudest achievements.
Having fired the imagination of a generation.
But we lost all that.
Pulls into port for the last time.
Or perhaps we've just forgotten that we are still pioneers, that we've barely begun, and that our greatest accomplishments cannot be behind us, because our destiny lies above us.
That narration is very cheesy, and it's hard not to laugh at it if you like making fun of Matthew McConaughey.
Honestly,
but
I thought that was good.
Yeah, I mean, I love the trailer. There's a reason why I showed it to you, and I think Nolan has time and time again made the absolute best trailers for his movies, because, like, obviously never garnered a sense of what the plot even really was from that trailer. It was purely a matter of getting across the tone and vibe of the movie. And it was more just how that was orchestrated to that Hans Zimmer music that reminded me of why I love that movie, I guess. And again, super flawed movie. Like I love it on almost entirely a presentation. But yeah, I don't have much more to say about Interstellar, really. I'm also kind of trying to keep these bits short, so...
absolutely.
Do you have anything you wanted to say about that trailer?
Yeah, I was really surprised that Matthew McConaughey is a good actor when he wants to be.
Yeah.
Like, I felt like that voiceover was really good. That made me feel something. And I understand that's also with the Hans Zimmer music, which I'm a big fan of Hans Zimmer, and he's done some great films, scoring for some great films. Really, I thought that was a solid trailer. I actually kind of want to check that out. Like, it's probably not like a super action-packed film thriller
it's
thing,
not, really.
You know? Right, but it seems like a really interesting piece on maybe space and exploration, and I think that's really neat.
So there's a lot, like, he's wonderful in the movie, but it's really hard for me to like still take him seriously. But
do you want to go to outer space? It'd be a lot cooler if you did.
It'd be a hell of a lot cooler if you did. Man, those alien girls, I keep getting older. They stay the same age.
Yes, they do.
It doesn't help because I recently watched Dazed and Confused. So
did you?
So watching that teaser, it was just
that's a great film. I love that movie.
Wonderful movie. It is not a space movie, however. So
I guess we'll save that for when we do our stoner pick.
Right. That should totally be a topic. So the next one is a very obvious choice when discussing some of the best space films of all time. And it might be something you have on your list too. But I still couldn't not put it in here.
I'm very concerned.
And that film, of course, being 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Fuck.
Which I take it you have that on your list too?
Let's just both discuss this one. Yeah. So I'll let you go first though, because you did bring it up.
So funny enough, I was having a really hard time figuring out my favorite space films, that I would want to talk about, and it seemed like an obvious thing because I love sci-fi and stuff like that. But then when I started thinking about it, there haven't been a ton of space-based films that really connected me. There's stuff like Star Wars and Star Trek and the Alien film. 2001, and this was really a hard thing for me as a film fan. I hadn't seen 2001 for the longest time, and I actually watched it for the first time in preparation for this podcast. So full disclosure.
Oh my god, are you serious?
Yeah, I had never seen
Real
it.
quick, Listen, me too. Yes, I'm serious. So like, I'd actually, real sidebar, but I'd seen it for the first time at a house party. Like, it was on the TV and people were watching it, but I didn't watch it.
That's not a movie to experience at a house party whatsoever.
No, it was kind of like late and people were just like tripping or doing whatever and fucking watching it. And I saw parts of it, so like I knew a little bit about it. And also culturally, like, it's really popular. People have referenced it so many times.
It's like 53 years old and it's like still
insanity how old it is, and we'll get into it. But
so
just how great.
It's wonderful, wonderful film.
I'll let you start, because I have some... Okay, I literally just watched it myself 2 days ago, and I actually, I did partake in some sort of hallucinogen to watch this film.
Oh, you did? Okay.
I did, for the first viewing of it.
But this is a movie I've obviously meant to watch for years, and I just never got around to it. I knew it was 2.5 hours long, and it was going to be slow and confusing. And I'm not saying that made me not excited to watch the movie. It's more just you have to be in a specific mood to watch something like that. And I kept on struggling to find myself in a specific place and time where I felt like it was the right time to watch 2001. I can only imagine what type of experience you had watching this on shrooms, but for me, if you want to discuss it on a very surface level, just as far as the filmmaking goes and as far as the visuals, I can't think of another movie that has a more satisfying visual style to it. And the fact that this came out in, like 68, I'm pretty sure?
Yes.
And the fact that there's not one special effect that looks bad in the movie. Like, this all still holds up extremely well, and that's partially because, Kubrick was a master, unlike anyone else.
Are you ready? Are you ready? I disagree.
You disagree? Oh, okay.
I disagree. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, there's actually a moment at the end of the film where he's going over the vast landscapes of, like, canyons and mountains and waterways, but he's using the inverted look. He's just switching the colors real quick and keeping that for a very long time.
I thought that was what he was doing, but I thought it fit really well. That was actually like one of the scariest sequences in the film to me.
Oh, it absolutely... Okay, so like the build up to it is great. A lot of the sequences in it are great, and I love a lot about it. But like that one part in particular, like, to today's standards, where anyone in any video editing program could just go ahead and like go through the filters and change it out and make that. At the time, in 1968, that is still phenomenal. Don't get me wrong. Mm-hmm. But watching it objectively in today, like the whole light sequence, the initial like sequence where they're showing the apes learning how to use tools, and then inevitably showing the greatest tool, which would be like a nuke in space or a space satellite. Well, I don't know. It's up for debate.
That's notoriously like one of the best like transitions in cinema, I think. Like where we first see them creating the first tool and him throwing it up in the air, and then it immediately cuts to like our most modern type of weapon that we have, which is, or at least that's what it's implied to be, which is this nuclear like space device. So shit like that is genius.
Absolutely.
What I most admire about the film, and Roger Ebert is the one who said something to the effect of this, but the fact that cinema has kind of evolved into this landscape of like trying to follow a specific narrative structure, and like it's fallen into this sense of like trying to tell stories to people,
which I think is actually very common even to this day.
Yeah, absolutely, and like especially that, and you'll soon come to realize that like even I enjoy fun blockbuster entertainment and Marvel films and whatnot. Like, I love every type of movie.
It has its place. Yeah, absolutely.
I think everything has its place in cinema.
Yes, but, I'd agree.
But the concept that every movie has to follow a specific formula like is ludicrous to me. And what I love about a film like 2001, and this was, in 68, like that, films had already been starting that trend of trying to follow narrative types and specifically stick to like a 3-act structure and stuff like that. Whereas 2001 tries to challenge the concept of what like film can be used for as an art form. And it's not necessarily, its goal is not necessarily to tell this story, even though there is kind of a story being told. It's more to not just express the atmosphere of like this type of this type of future and space and everything, but
well, real quick, it's like Stanley Kubrick is like a movie like 2001 is an art house film with a budget.
Yeah.
You know?
Absolutely.
And it's amazing that they can make something like that. Like the space satellite miniatures that they use that Star Wars would eventually go on to do their own and influence Star Wars. It's amazing what it went on to, like, the role that this film has in the history of cinema.
Like, in general. And what I love is, and, you know, this goes without saying when discussing a film like 2001, the movie, like, clearly is not trying to hold your hand in any way, and especially for the last, like, 20-30 minutes, it presents, like, all this shit to you that kind of comes off as, like, you could look at it as nonsensical, or just, even though it's not, it presents, like, all these confusing different elements to you, and it expects you to make your own idea of it. Yeah, the monolith itself, they're these very, like, cosmic horror sort of Lovecraftian concepts, but that the film is very much talking about, kind of, it relates to our concept of God, and that's kind of what Stanley Kubrick was mentioning his, like, the film is trying to say, is, it's like how, like, really, we can't define, like, what reality itself really means, and stuff. So, like, it shows us these things we can't really fully comprehend, but it's not, the monolith itself doesn't really have a clear-cut meaning, and that's what makes it so fascinating, is the fact that it is this beacon of confusion, and the movie just illustrates that to a T in those, like, final moments.
Now, I have one final critique of the film, aside from just the inverted filters. Now, I love that final sequence and the whole light show and all that, so don't think that I don't like the ending sequence, but in terms of, like, one other issue that I do have is the whole beginning sequence with the separate space squad that they're going to see the monolith. I feel like that could have either been, like, abridged, like, they could have gone without that and just dropped us from the intro into the second squad. Here's who they are, here's what they're doing, here's what's gone on. They could have shown, like, a clip of these people with the monolith where, like, the ear ringing thing happened. They could have shown that clip and we would have been fine. The whole introduction of, like, this guy that we're introduced to going and doing this whole thing, I felt like that was really unnecessary for a movie that's already 2 hours and 30 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with you necessarily. It's not something I noticed while watching the film, and what I love so much about the film is that it takes the time to really just set up the locations and the atmosphere of everything.
Let it be clear, like, I don't mind the pacing. I could deal with slow pacing. I'm fine with the slow pacing. But I feel like that very first crew that we're introduced to didn't amount to much and takes away, because they're also acting in that, hey pal, old-timey style, you know, like, and that takes me out of it. For, like, a movie that otherwise would be virtually flawless. Like, the most dated part of the whole film is that very first team, that character and his segments. Because if it wasn't for those parts, the rest of the film holds up to this very day as even a modern film would go.
Yeah, and these are things I just didn't notice. Oh, and like, even when you're bringing them up, like, it doesn't work as a detriment to me. Like, maybe if you want to look at it objectively as, like, what is dated about it and what isn't, which really, I mean, the movie is called 2001: A Space Odyssey. Like, it in itself is, like, dated, like, just by the title alone.
Very true.
If it being set in the future. So it's, I went into it with a set of expectations, and I went in knowing that there were elements that were probably gonna, like, not completely hold up, but, like, I just wasn't bothered by it. I thought it was a perfect film. I was enthralled beginning to end with, like, every frame, basically. So the clip I wanted to show is, like, the trailer for the film. But this was the trailer that they did for the 50th anniversary release in 2018. And to me, it's far better than the trailer that came out in the, like, way back to advertise the movie. Like, this one captures the tone and spirit of the film.
Dave, do you mind if I ask you a personal question? No, not at all.
I've wondered whether you might be having some second thoughts about the mission.
How do you mean?
Rumors about something being dug up on the moon. I never gave these stories much credence, but particularly in view of some of the other things that have happened, I find them difficult to put out of my mind.
Open the pod bay doors, please, Hal.
Open the pod bay doors, Hal.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
What are you talking about, Hal?
This conversation can serve no purpose anymore. Goodbye.
So my final choice, I'm kind of ending on a more heartwarming, like sappy note on my end. Something that personally I connect with a lot, and it is definitely a mainstream movie. And I'm pretty sure it's a movie either you haven't seen, or if you have seen it, you probably don't like it. Me knowing you, but you would probably find it as no surprise that I'm a fan of this film. And that is, of course, Space Chimps.
Space Chimps?
No, I'm kidding. It's not. It's not really Space Chimps. No. What I'm choosing is actually Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. That's my choice.
Oh shit! Okay.
So, have you seen the Guardians movies by chance, or?
Yeah. I've seen. I think I've seen both of them.
Okay. So,
yeah.
So, just my quick background on me as like a fan of the Marvel movies. So I've kind of grown up with like this line of movies to an extent. Like I was 7 when the first Iron Man came out, and I have a vivid memory of going to see that in theaters opening night. And since then, I have seen every film in that continuity in theaters.
Wow, like, really quick, you actually started right as that universe was beginning. Because that's, like, the first one, right? Iron Man?
Yeah, the first Iron Man is the first part of the MCU continuity. So
yeah, so you actually literally started right as that was beginning. That's really cool to be able to follow it along that way.
Yeah. So I've been following this franchise my entire life, and I've seen every single one of them in theaters. And the series, it has highs, it has lows. Most of them are fairly mediocre, but I wouldn't say there's one of them that's really all that terrible. Like, they're all fairly competently made movies. Some are definitely better than others. Both of the Guardians of the Galaxy movies, I've always kind of considered to be offshoots that you could watch even if you're not a fan of the other Marvel movies, and they kind of work as these standalone sort of things. And regardless of that, I consider them to be by far my favorite of the Marvel films, and they're actually just some of my favorite movies in general. To me, there's something about that specific entourage of characters and like their banter that they have amongst themselves that I really connect to. And the movies are just, and I'm a big softie, and the movies are brimming with heart. And there's like endless heart with like all the characters, but it's done well. And to me, it doesn't feel too sappy. You might disagree with me on that because it gets pretty overly heartfelt at times. But overall,
that doesn't bother me none.
The movies have a really great sense of humor, and the characters are some of my favorite movie characters, like maybe ever. And that's a bold statement, but it's true. Like I just connect to these movies on this like intense level that I can't really explain. And these are both of those movies are probably my favorite space movies. I mentioned Empire Strikes Back earlier, which is probably like the best space movie ever made. But to me, if I'm considering my personal favorites, it's both the Guardians movies. But I wanted to talk specifically about the second one, because to me the second one is by far the most underrated of the two.
The second one's the one I actually saw in theaters.
Yeah. I mean, I obviously saw it in theaters too. But everyone always looks at the first one and says that one is far superior to the second one, and everyone seems to have all these issues with Guardians 2. Whereas to me, it's by far a much better movie that like goes a lot deeper into the characters and it fleshes them out, and it honestly just has a much more like the story is told at a slower pace, and it takes time to just like let the characters breathe and have conversations, and it's a bit more mature as far as character development goes with all of them, in my opinion. But the film also is not the film is not afraid to have this like really great sense of humor to itself, where it's like full of like oddly like really mean like kind of dark humor between these characters. Like just like the way they are constantly insulting each other is just fucking great in my opinion. But then by the end you see like that like because they've all come from these troubled backgrounds, them practically verbally abusing each other is their way of showing love for each other. So it's like this huge toxic family that they've created. And I love that so much. And I know it's a very I obviously chose a very mainstream film as this choice, but I can't deny the fact that it's one of my favorite movies, and I consider Guardians Volume 2 to be my favorite Marvel movie. So
really? Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
No, I don't blame you though. Like I think they're both really solid films, and the like dynamic between the characters is great. I love Drax, of course. I grew up with wrestling, so like seeing him get the win is like really great.
That was like
Rocket
his breakout
Raccoon
acting role too, with Dave Bautista, right? Like that.
Hey man, his breakout role was what was it, man? The Iron Fist or something with the RZA from the Wu-Tang Clan.
Okay.
Yeah, that was his breakout role.
I hear that movie's really great. I haven't seen it actually.
It's okay. I mean, I like it. This is what made Bautista the movie star that he is. I love him as Drax. He's like such a like funny character. He's got like so many great one-liners.
The way he takes everything literally is
so
honestly
literal.
Such a genius concept for a character. And but you know, he also has serious weight to him. Like he's clearly been through some fucked up shit in his past. Like his family was murdered in front of him, you know, and that you clearly see those are the effects his characters had. And honestly, Guardians of the Galaxy, like those movies are the closest thing I think we've gotten to like a live action Cowboy Bebop sort of thing. I mean, they're very like different tonally and whatnot, but we have that dynamic of the misfits all together in a spaceship, like going and doing these wacky misadventures. There's like the weird surreal elements of it too. Even though like they both have much different types of music, both of them have a focus on music. And what I was really getting at is all the characters are coming from extremely troubled backstories, and they kind of all have this bond like over their past traumas together, and that's very much so something that Bebop has. This second movie in particular I can't praise enough, and I think it deserves far more praise than it gets. The scene I wanted to put here is actually the last scene of the movie, which is the Ravager's funeral. So spoilers, at the end of Guardians 2, they kind of killed off who was arguably my favorite character, which was Yondu, played by Michael Rooker. And this was a character that they had throughout the course of the last two movies. And to set up the scene and give a bit of context, like one of this character's struggles was that he was a part of basically like this space squadron called like the Ravagers, and they're meant to uphold some sort of like code, and Yondu ends up breaking the Ravagers code for other reasons in the film.
I think it's more like space pirates.
Yeah, they're like space pirates, exactly.
Yeah,
that's definitely what they are. But they have a code, And I won't go into all the details, but Yondu had broken the Ravager's code, and it had gotten him on bad terms with whom used to be his original Ravager's squadron. Which, funny enough, in the comics, Yondu and that group of Ravagers, they were the original Guardians of the Galaxy in the comics. So it's a nice little nod to the original group by having them in there as supporting characters. So Yondu ends up giving his life for a noble cause, and it ends up coming out throughout the galaxy, and the scene is him getting that Ravager's funeral that he always needed. And this is one of my favorite scenes in a comic book film. And it's very sappy. It's extremely sappy, and but to me, the movie had definitely earned it at this point. And I'm really sharing it because I cannot help but bawl every time I watch this scene, at the end of the film. This is one of those things where, without a doubt, I always cry my eyes out at this specific scene.
It's not time to make a change. Just relax, take it easy. You're still young, that's your fault. There's so much you have to know. Find a girl, settle down. If you want, you can marry. Look at me, I am old, but I'm happy. I was once like you are now, and I know that it's not easy to be calm when you found something going on.
What is it?
But take your time.
I sent word to Yondu's old Ravager buddies and told them what he did.
Everything you've got for you will still be
It's a Ravager funeral.
But your dreams may not. How can I try to explain? When I do, he turns away again. It's always been the same old story. From the moment I could talk, I was ordered.
He didn't let us down after all, Captain.
No, he did not, son. He did not.
I know I have to go.
Fare thee well, old friend.
Yondu, daughter, I will see you in the stars.
He didn't chase him away.
No.
Even though he yelled at him. And was always mean. And he stole batteries he didn't need.
Well, of course not.
It's not time to make a change. Just sit down, take it slowly. You're still young, that's your fault. There's so much you have to go through. Find a girl,
It's just
settle down. If you want,
it's an unspoken thing.
can marry. Look at me, I am old, but I'm happy. All the times that I cried, keeping all the things I knew inside. It's hard,
And so are you,
but it's harder to ignore it.
on the inside.
If they were right, I'd agree, but it's them they know, not me. Now there's a way, and I know that I have to go away. I know I have to go.
And the fact that the final shot of that movie is a raccoon crying, but it's so genuinely effective. Like that's something I greatly admire about the movie. That scene in general is one of my favorite scenes in a comic book movie overall. Because that is what works about them so well. You see them all coming together, like all being there for each other as a family, like all grieving over this loss of Yondu together, and there's just something so brilliantly it's sad, but it's so beautiful. Like that is the best way Yondu could have ever gone out. Like that's the best ending he could have ever gotten to his story, and yeah, just I don't even know if I have a ton to say about it really, other than I think it kind of speaks for itself.
Wow, excellent. Yeah, I think really nice selection there. And I'm glad that you brought in more modern films because I'm about to bring this back to the 90s.
Okay, nice.
So I'm starting out with another crew. And this crew isn't quite as revered as your crew. People usually look at this movie and find it to be one of the worst, if not the worst, of the franchise.
Oh, wow.
But I'm bringing this one up because it's probably one of my favorite of the franchise. And I'm not saying that because the movie itself is better, but the concept of what they had is more interesting.
I'm scared.
This is a guilty pleasure right off the top.
Okay. I can respect that.
So my choice, I'm just going to show the scene, honestly. And it's really short.
Okay.
But this scene doesn't encapsulate what I love about the movie at all. But it's something really interesting that I'll talk about a little bit after I show you. How about that?
Okay. All right. I have a few options in my head of what I think it is, but
what do you think it is?
I have two in my head because you said it's a franchise.
Yep.
You say it's completely guilty pleasure, and you say people usually say it's the worst of the franchise.
Yep.
So one of the options I was thinking is Alien Resurrection.
Mm-hmm.
That's the fourth of the series. The other option is Jason X.
Oh, Jason X would have been a good choice. That's a space film.
Was I wrong on both of those?
As a matter of fact, you weren't, because it is Alien Resurrection.
Alien Resurrection, okay.
I love this movie.
I think I saw it once when I was like 10, and I don't remember anything about it.
So, ready?
I am ready.
All right.
Drink out. Constantly. I'm gonna take a wild guess here, General, but I'm thinking whatever you got going on here, it ain't exactly approved by Congress.
Oh, is that it? Oh, just the whiskey cube?
Yeah, so, one, I thought you'd appreciate it because he asked him, do you drink? And he's like, constantly. I thought that was funny.
Yeah, no, it was a cool concept. Like, I wish we had those.
So, that's the thing is, like, those cubes there, right? How they use a laser to melt a cube. I actually have a friend of mine who is trying to do a coffee business that is run on laser beaming these coffee beans.
That's hilarious. Like, so he wants to start a business based off of Alien Resurrection.
Basically, he showed me his machine just the other day, and I was just like, wow, this is like fascinating. So it's like, yeah, it actually it gets rid of a lot of what it costs to have to dispose of waste and things of that nature because it's a laser beam and it just fucking disintegrates the shit. So it's actually really interesting. So it's like you see something like that where it's like, oh, let me just melt your whiskey real quick. And it's like, that's kind of like the future I'd like to see. You know, I already got like a Keurig machine at home. You know, I want the next step to be a laser beam.
Doesn't seem like incredibly far off. I mean, it sounds like something that could happen. It sounds like an investment someone would make because bitches love alcohol, I guess. But
bitches love alcohol. That should be the slogan, really.
Of the Toonami 2 podcast in general.
Bitches love alcohol. Yeah, I can see that. We'll pay Steve Bloom to say that. How about that?
I'm sure he told me would.
I bet he probably would.
I don't have anything at all to say about Alien Resurrection. I love the first Alien, and I almost put it on the list, but it's just been a while since I've seen it. So
let me say this, okay? Because honestly, I don't think the trailer's going to do it much justice either. I love the whole Alien franchise, right? I really hold it near and dear to my heart. And the reason that I love this movie, it came out at a time where it kind of had a music video feel to it. You know, it really felt like somebody who shoots music videos made this film. So it was really like stylistically interesting in terms of like camera angles and things of that nature. The crew is the real reason that I love this movie. Now, the movie itself doesn't expand on the crew for shit. So it's got, you know, Ron Perlman, and it's got Michael Wincott, who was top dollar in The Crow. And I love The Crow, so it already won me with that. He has no fucking role in this movie. He is the captain of the ship, but you never really get the impression that he matters, aside from, like, that one scene where he's talking to the commander about, like, having his crew come on and all that. He really doesn't serve much of a role, aside from being a victim, which is really a shame, because he's a great actor and a great character. The whole crew is really underwhelming. Like, they look interesting, they seem interesting, they have potential to be great characters, but they don't really explore that. So my main reason for liking this movie is, like, it's not only fun to watch, like, it's a guilty pleasure, but also the potential for it is pretty great, because the crew that they had assembled, I think is interesting. It's basically, it's not Cowboy Bebop, but what it is a group of space couriers. They basically do illegal transporting of things. Like, they collected these hosts for the aliens, you know, or they collected the aliens. I can't remember. It's been a couple months. But actually, I did watch this like a couple months ago again. So they do like illegal space delivery.
Yeah.
Which is awesome. That's a great concept. To like Bebop's point of like, you know, being space bounty hunters and serving that purpose, space couriers have got to be a serious thing. You know, people trying to transport shit, illegal shit. To me, it seems like it's such a really strong concept that it could have been a great movie, especially with the alien moniker and having it be there's aliens. All you needed is to care about the cast of characters. But, you know, sadly, like, they really don't explore on the cast that great. Like, they have moments, but they're basically alien food. And Brad Dourif as one of the scientists.
Yeah.
So you got Chucky in there to fucking, you know, just...
Yeah. No, that's pretty funny. So it seems like they really went the slasher film approach with Alien 4.
Yeah, basically, kinda. But, like, I just, like, I see that movie as, like, what it could have been if they cared.
But you still enjoy it regardless, like, at least enough to put it on your list.
Yeah, as a whole, I think it's actually a great movie. I think people should see it, and I don't think it deserves some of the hate that it gets, but...
I'll definitely watch it at some point. I mean, to me, like, I never really liked anything outside of the first two. Actually, I really like Prometheus, if I'm being honest.
That's really good, too.
I could have chose that, actually.
I like all of them for different reasons, though.
No, me too. But I think that's a solid choice. I think it's nice and obscure. It's a little, but I think it's a little more personal than any of my choices, really, as far as like it being kind of a weird choice that really connects to you.
So the last movie that I had for this is it's a film that actually I've known about for a very long time and actually played the video game for the PlayStation 1 before I saw the movie.
I think I might know what you're talking about.
Okay. And this is a movie that I actually only saw because my girlfriend loves this. She loves this film. And I watched it, and I love it too. Like, all the performances, the actors, it's got a great cast. What movie do you think I chose?
Would it happen to star Carl Urban and Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson?
No.
Oh, damn.
No.
I was hoping we were going to talk about the Doom movie. Okay.
I should have, because you know what? I thought of the Doom movie before doing this,
Dude,
and it just narrowly
hilarious, and I love it.
It would have made it. It's really bad, but like it narrowly, like, okay, because I just watched 2001: Space Odyssey, I had to talk about it, and that's why that made the list, and that Doom didn't.
Okay, I actually don't know what you're talking about now. So.
Here's the trailer for the film that I chose.
Okay.
Every 5,000 years.
Remove the shield.
When the three planets are in eclipse, the
black hole like a door is open. Evil comes, spreading terror and chaos.
There's nothing that can stop this.
There is only one thing.
Perfect.
The Mondachiwan have in their possession the only weapon to defeat evil. 4 elements, gathered around a 5th.
Hello.
Corbin, sweetheart. You got broken fingers, you can't punch my number?
Hi, Mom.
Welcome home. Have a nice day.
Major Dallas, we're selected for a mission of the utmost importance.
What mission?
Save the world.
Is that thing solid?
Unbreakable.
Good. Word of the stone.
I don't know. And even if I did know, I wouldn't tell somebody like you.
There's nowhere else to go.
In God's name, we do such a thing.
Hang on.
Good choice. Yeah, that looked really awesome. Like, I think I saw bits and pieces of that movie when I was really young, but I've never like sat down and watched it start to
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Really awesome trailer though. Mila Jovovich is endlessly watchable.
I know. I mean, like, she's been in every Resident Evil, so
In that outfit especially. But yeah, what a cast. Gary Oldman too. I mean,
which Gary Oldman, if he's not always amazing, he's like really great in this.
I mean, I think he's usually pretty fucking.
That's
incredible
yeah, exactly.
in what he's in. I can't think of a bad Gary Oldman performance.
There's a lot of Gary Oldman films that are like really worth going back and watching, and this would be one of them.
True Romance, you know, Air Force One, even the Batman movies. He's a great.
He was the best Gordon. I feel.
I mean, absolutely. Given what we like, his competition is not much at all.
I mean that too.
He's the only one who actually seems like Jim.
I give my guidelines like basically off of the animated series, so it's like the animated series.
Yeah,
you know what I mean, like
animated series and the comics. But anyway, we're talking about the Fifth Element.
Yes. So the Fifth Element, really don't have a lot to say about it. It's a really great movie. You got Bruce Willis in there, like coming right off of like Pulp Fiction.
Back when he cared about acting.
Yeah, and you could tell he cared because the humor in this is like really the main selling point. Like it's a funny fucking movie. It really reminds me. I know you see Chris Tucker in here. It reminds me of like a Rush Hour movie in space.
Oh, okay.
Which. Yeah, it's got a great sense of humor, and honestly, like obviously, it's got a great cast, but it's a lot of fun. Sadly, I don't have too much to say about it, but I do have to say it is well worth a watch.
looks really cool. I mean, Luc Besson, however you pronounce his name, he's a very interesting filmmaker.
Yeah.
And I don't think I've seen many of his films. It seems to be he makes really fascinating concepts more than he makes like genuinely great films.
This is one of those, in part. Like, I think it's a great film, but like stylistically, like it looks amazing. Fifth Element's really worth your time. It's a great film. I would highly recommend that one.
I'll give it a shot. All right, and so next we're going to discuss the bump of the week.
So moving on over to the bump of the week. So this week we have Cyberpunk 2077 Toonami review, but we aren't actually going to be able to see this one. So you at home are going to be able to see this, and
we haven't even recorded it yet, but
it's in the works.
It will be done by the time you guys see it.
So you guys will be able to enjoy it, and we will be able to grind and watch how much we hate it as we make it, because it will take a bit of time.
Welcome to Night City. This is Cyberpunk 2077. Play as V, a protagonist who, one way or the other, ends up becoming a gangster in Night City, trying to survive and work their way to the top. There are 3 different backstories you can pick to begin the game, but they all lead to the same place. As you take on missions, you earn experience to level up your character with many different skill trees to choose from to fit your playstyle. The game also rewards you additional experience specific to how you play. Progression is nice, both story and gameplay wise. I have a lot of fun with all the weapons in the game. They feel great. The atmosphere of the city and back alleys really give Night City its own feel. The story is interesting and compelling, with great performances from its many different characters. However, there is a lack of character customization, and you'll have to wear mismatching armor for their stats. There's also a lack of side activities and no side games. Lame. The game is a complete and buggy mess, crashing every 1 hour on a PS5 with plenty of pop-ins and admittedly funny collisions. What you have here is a solid game behind a wall of bugs. I'd rate the game an 8 without glitches, but in the current state of things, I'll bump it down to a 7. Wake up, samurai. We have a console to crash.
Well, I hope that was as good as it could have been, I guess, and I hope Toonami didn't make a review before this video came out, so.
I mean, if they did, we'll still be able to plug this, and hopefully people will be confused and watch ours instead.
Alright. Well, speaking of plugging, that's always a good transition.
That is. What do you have for plugs this week?
I have that YouTube channel with 4 very amateur movie reviews on it. But if you want to hear me talk about a couple other movies somewhere else, I guess you could watch them if you could get past the terrible audio. I plan on posting some better reviews on that channel at some point soon. But as for right now, I'm actually working on a film that I'm about to start shooting on Sunday. So that's all I've got working on right now. That and this very podcast. You know.
So yeah, as far as myself, the channels that I will plug here today are Trash Shoes, which is my main avatar character channel that is really like kind of in a formulaic stage right now. I'm trying to figure out what I'm doing for that channel. There should be Let's Plays and streams and all that stuff, but I'm still kind of ironing that out. So Trash Shoes exists. Really, there's nothing on it right now, but you can check it out. Aside from that, my main channel, Neo Swim, still going strong. You want to check out any videos there, I do some random stuff. And then here on Toonami Tube is really where I'm just trying to put things over, because I've been making like Dragon Ball Z intros.
I've noticed, I've watched a few of them.
Yeah, no, I'm pretty happy with the results of some of the things I've been making lately. So there's always, like, I have so many ideas. There's going to be plenty of just short little videos to check out here on Toonami Tube. So keep a lookout, because like if you like Toonami style like bumps or intros or just all things Toonami, we got that right here. So be sure to check that out.
Yeah, absolutely. You make good work, sir.
All right, so next month we're going to be talking about Samurai Jack Season 5, the final season, and the PlayStation 4 hit Samurai Jack Battle Through Time.
I played it on Xbox, but yeah, same thing.
Oh, okay. Well, same difference. And then after that, we're going to talk our favorite Toonami ties. So yeah, that's what we got next month. You looking forward to that? A little bit of Samurai Jack and some Toonami ties to celebrate their anniversary here?
Yeah, I'm super stoked for it.
All right, so that's all from me today.
And that's all from me today. So I guess that's it. Bye. Go fuck yourself.
Later.